Hey there, sci-fi lovers. Welcome to our channel, where the universe unfolds and the impossible becomes real. If you're as passionate about the unknown as we are, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us create more mind-bending adventures just for you.
Chapter title, The Prince's Gambit. Nash woke to the soft hum of the Buzzard systems, a steady reminder of the ship's ceaseless journey through the vastness of space. The artificial lights in his quarters had dimmed to simulate nighttime, casting long shadows across the room. For a moment, he lay still, trying to piece together the fragments of his dream, but they slipped away like sand through his fingers. He sighed, rolling onto his back and staring at the ceiling. His mind quickly returned to the events of the previous day. The promotion, the meeting with the prince, the weight of responsibility that now rested on his shoulders. It all felt surreal, as if he were living in a story that wasn't his own. But the reality was undeniable. He was now a captain aboard one of the most advanced ships in the Principality's fleet, tasked with a mission that could determine the future of the entire realm. Nash swung his legs over the side of the bed and stood up, stretching to ease the tension in his muscles. He crossed the small room to the sink, splashing cold water on his face to clear the lingering fog of sleep. As he looked at his reflection in the mirror, he barely recognized the man staring back at him. His brown eyes, usually filled with a quiet determination, now held a hint of uncertainty. His dark hair, usually kept neat, was tousled from sleep. But beneath the surface, he could see the same resolve that had driven him to this point. He dressed quickly, donning the standard-issue uniform that now bore the insignia of a captain. The weight of the new rank felt unfamiliar on his shoulders, a constant reminder of the expectations that came with it. As he fastened the last button, he took a deep breath, steeling himself for the day ahead. The corridors of the Buzzard were quiet as Nash made his way to the bridge. The ship's systems hummed softly around him, a comforting presence in the otherwise silent hallways. He passed by several crew members, each one offering him a respectful nod or salute. It was strange, he thought, how quickly they had come to accept him as their captain. But there was no time to dwell on that now. He had a job to do. When he arrived at the bridge, he found Captain Alaric already there, standing before the large viewport that offered a breathtaking view of the stars. The captain turned as Nash approached, a small smile playing at the corners of his lips. "Good morning, Captain Weaver," Alaric said, his voice carrying the same calm authority as always. "I trust you slept well?" Nash nodded. "As well as can be expected, sir. There's a lot on my mind." Alaric's smile widened slightly. "Understandable. These are uncertain times, and the burden you carry is not a light one. But I have faith in you, Nash. You've proven yourself time and time again." Nash appreciated the sentiment, but he couldn't help feeling the weight of the captain's words. "Thank you, sir. I'll do my best to live up to your expectations." Alaric nodded approvingly. "I know you will. Now, let's get to work." The two men moved to the central console, where a holographic display showed the current status of the Buzzard and the surrounding fleet. The ships had regrouped after the previous day's journey, their formation tight and well coordinated. But there was a tension in the air, a sense of anticipation that seemed to hang over the entire fleet. "Any word from the prince?" Nash asked as he scanned the display. "Not yet," Alaric replied, his eyes narrowing as he studied the map. "But I expect we'll hear from him soon. He's not one to sit idle while the situation unfolds around him." Nash nodded, his thoughts turning to the prince. The young royal had impressed him with his composure and determination, but there was still much Nash didn't know about him. What drove him? What were his true intentions? These were questions that weighed heavily on Nash's mind as they prepared for the next steps in their mission. As if on cue, the comm system crackled to life, and the voice of the prince filled the bridge. "Captain Alaric, Captain Weaver, I trust you're both ready for the next phase of our operation?" Alaric stepped forward, his voice steady. "We're ready, Your Highness." What are your orders? The prince's voice was calm, but there was an underlying urgency to his words. We've received intelligence that Lord Tarn's forces are moving to secure a key stronghold in the Outer Rim. If they succeed, it will give them a significant advantage in this conflict. We cannot allow that to happen. Nash listened intently, his mind already racing through the possibilities. The Outer Rim was a vast and treacherous region, filled with uncharted territory and hostile factions. Securing a stronghold there would be no easy task, especially with Tarn's forces already on the move. We'll need to act quickly, the prince continued. The Buzzard's stealth capabilities will be crucial in this mission. You'll need to slip past their defenses and disable the stronghold's communication array. Once that's done, our forces will move in to secure the area. Nash exchanged a glance with Alaric, who nodded slightly. It was a bold plan, but it was also their best chance to turn the tide in their favor. We understand, Your Highness, Nash said, his voice firm. We'll get it done. I have no doubt that you will, Captain, the prince replied, a hint of warmth in his tone. This mission is critical. The fate of the principality may well rest on its success. As the comms went silent, Nash felt the weight of the prince's words settle over him like a heavy cloak. There was no room for error. They had to succeed, no matter the cost. Alaric placed a reassuring hand on Nash's shoulder. We'll get through this, Nash. We've faced worse odds before. Nash appreciated the gesture, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this mission was different. The stakes were higher, the risks greater. But there was no time for doubt. They had a job to do. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity as the crew prepared for the mission. Nash moved through the ship, checking in with the various teams and making sure everything was in place. The Buzzard's stealth systems were activated, its weapons primed and ready. The tension in the air was palpable, a silent reminder of the danger that lay ahead. As Nash inspected the ship, he couldn't help but notice the professionalism and dedication of the crew. They moved with purpose, their faces set in determined expressions. These were men and women who had served the principality for years, many of them veterans of previous conflicts. Nash knew that they were all aware of the stakes, and they were ready to do whatever it took to succeed. In the hangar, Nash found Lieutenant Kara Ellis overseeing the final checks on the Buzzard's weapon systems. Kara was one of the best weapons officers in the fleet, known for her sharp mind and steady hand in combat. Nash had worked with her on several missions before, and he trusted her implicitly. How are we looking, Kara? Nash asked as he approached. Kara glanced up from her console, her eyes sharp and focused. All systems are green, Captain. The pulse cannons are fully charged, and the torpedo tubes are loaded. We're ready to give them hell. Nash smiled, appreciating her confidence. Good. We're going to need every advantage we can get. Kara nodded, her expression serious. I've run the simulations, Captain. It's going to be a tough fight, but we can do this. The Buzzard was built for this kind of mission. Nash placed a hand on her shoulder, feeling the tension in her muscles. I know, Kara. We've got the best crew in the fleet, and we're flying the best ship. We'll get through this. Kara's expression softened slightly, and she gave him a small smile. Thanks, Captain. That means a lot. With the preparations complete, Nash returned to the bridge, where Alaric and the rest of the command team were waiting. The holographic display showed the stronghold's location, a distant outpost on the edge of the Outer Rim. It was heavily fortified, with a network of defense turrets and sensor arrays designed to detect any approaching ships. But the Buzzard was no ordinary ship. Its advanced stealth systems would allow them to slip past the defenses undetected, giving them a chance to disable the communication array before Tarn's forces could react. All systems are go, Captain, one of the officers reported, his voice steady. We're ready to begin the approach. Nash nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it. The moment of truth. Take us in, he ordered, his voice calm but firm. The Buzzard moved silently through space, its engines emitting only the faintest hum. The stars outside the viewport seemed to blur as they picked up speed, the ship's advanced propulsion systems propelling them toward their target with incredible precision. As they approached the stronghold, Nash could see the faint outlines of the defense turrets in the distance, their barrels swiveling back and forth as they scanned the surrounding space. The Buzzard's stealth systems were working perfectly, keeping them hidden from the stronghold's sensors. But the closer they got, the more Nash could feel the tension building inside him. One wrong move, one small mistake, and the entire mission could be compromised. "Steady," Alaric said quietly, his eyes fixed on the display. "We're almost there." The Buzzard continued its approach, slipping past the outer defenses and moving into position above the stronghold. Nash could see the communication array now, a massive structure bristling with antennas and relay stations. It was the nerve center of the stronghold's defenses, and taking it out would cripple Tarn's ability to coordinate his forces. "Prepare to fire," Nash ordered, his voice steady. The Buzzard's targeting systems locked onto the array, its weapons primed and ready to strike. Nash watched the display intently, his finger hovering over the trigger. "Now!" he commanded. The Buzzard's weapons fired in unison, sending a volley of high-energy pulses toward the communication array. The impact was immediate, the array exploding in a shower of sparks and debris. The stronghold's defenses went dark, its sensors blinded and its turrets falling silent. "We did it," one of the officers exclaimed, his voice filled with relief. But Nash knew better than to celebrate too soon. The mission was far from over. "Get us out of here," he ordered, his voice firm. The Buzzard turned sharply, its engines roaring to life as it sped away from the stronghold. But even as they made their escape, Nash knew that the hardest part was yet to come. Tarn's forces would be coming for them, and they would stop at nothing to take back what they had lost. As the Buzzard raced through space, Nash felt a sense of determination settle over him. They had struck a blow against Tarn, but the fight was far from over. There would be more battles to come, more challenges to face. But as long as they had the Buzzard, and as long as they had each other, he knew that they could overcome anything. Hours later, after the adrenaline had worn off and the crew had settled back into their routines, Nash found himself alone in his quarters once again. The events of the day replayed in his mind like a hollow reel, each moment etched into his memory. He thought of the prince, of the calm determination in his voice as he had given the orders. There was a strength there, a quiet resolve that Nash couldn't help but admire. The prince was young, but he was a leader in every sense of the word. But there was also a weight to his words, a sense of urgency that hinted at something more. Something deeper. Nash couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this conflict than met the eye. That there were forces at play that they didn't yet understand. But for now, all he could do was focus on the task at hand. The battle was far from over, and there would be more challenges to face in the days ahead. As he lay down on his bed, Nash felt the familiar pull of exhaustion tugging at his mind. But even as sleep claimed him, he couldn't help but wonder what the future held. What challenges awaited them? What sacrifices would they have to make? One thing was certain, the road ahead would be long and difficult. But as long as they had the Buzzard, and as long as they had each other, Nash knew that they could face whatever came their way. The lights in his quarters dimmed, and the soft hum of the Buzzard's systems lulled him into a deep, dreamless sleep. And as the ship continued its silent journey through the stars, Nash's last thoughts were of the prince and the words he had spoken. Loyalty and duty were the pillars of the principality. And Nash would do everything in his power to uphold those ideals, no matter the cost. In the morning, the ship was abuzz with activity as the crew prepared for the next phase of their mission. Nash could feel the change in the atmosphere as he made his way to the briefing room, where Alaric and the senior officers were already gathered. The room was filled with the soft glow of holographic displays, each one showing different sections of the fleet in the surrounding space. The tension in the air was palpable, and Nash knew that everyone was waiting for the prince's next move. Alaric stood at the head of the table, his expression grave as he addressed the officers. "We've received word from our scouts. Tarn's forces are on the move. They've detected our presence, and they're preparing to counterattack." A murmur ran through the room as the officers exchanged uneasy glances. Nash felt a knot form in his stomach. He had known that Tarn wouldn't take their attack lying down, but the speed of his response was alarming. Alaric continued, his voice steady. Our scouts report that Tarn's fleet is larger than anticipated. They've brought in reinforcements from several outlying systems, and they're preparing to launch a full-scale assault on our position. Nash felt a chill run down his spine. A full-scale assault? The Buzzard was a powerful ship, but it was designed for stealth and precision, not for taking on an entire fleet. He could see the same concern mirrored in the faces of the other officers. What are our options? One of the officers asked, her voice tight with tension. Alaric turned to the holographic map, highlighting several key positions in the surrounding space. We have two choices. We can attempt to hold our position and engage Tarn's forces directly, or we can fall back to a more defensible location and regroup with the rest of our fleet. Nash studied the map, weighing the options in his mind. Holding their position would be risky, especially against a larger force. But falling back could give Tarn the opportunity to reclaim the stronghold and gain the upper hand in the conflict. What about reinforcements? Another officer asked. Can we call in support from the main fleet? Alaric shook his head, his expression grim. The main fleet is currently engaged on the other side of the sector. They won't be able to reach us in time. We're on our own. A heavy silence fell over the room as the officers absorbed the news. Nash could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on them. Whatever choice they made, it would have far-reaching consequences. Finally, Alaric turned to Nash, his gaze steady. What do you think, Captain Weaver? You know the Buzzard better than anyone. What's our best course of action? Nash took a deep breath, considering the options. The Buzzard's strength lay in its stealth and mobility. They couldn't afford to engage Tarn's fleet head-on, not without reinforcements. But there was another option, one that played to the Buzzard's strengths. I suggest we use the Buzzard's stealth capabilities to our advantage, Nash said, his voice calm but firm. We can lure Tarn's fleet into a trap. We'll make them think we're falling back, but in reality, we'll be positioning ourselves for a surprise attack. Once they're in position, we strike. Alaric considered Nash's proposal, his eyes narrowing as he weighed the risks. It's a risky move, but it could work. Tarn's forces will be overconfident after our retreat. They won't be expecting us to strike back. The other officers nodded in agreement, and Nash could see the tension in the room begin to ease. It was a bold plan, but it was also their best chance of turning the tide in their favor. Very well, Alaric said, his voice resolute. We'll proceed with Captain Weaver's plan. Begin preparations immediately. We don't have much time. The officers sprang into action, issuing orders and coordinating the various teams. Nash felt a surge of determination as he watched them work. This was it. Their moment of truth. As the crew prepared for the operation, Nash found himself standing alone at the viewport, gazing out at the stars. The enormity of what they were about to do weighed heavily on his mind. The stakes had never been higher, and the margin for error had never been smaller. He thought of the prince, of the trust that had been placed in him. Nash knew that the success of this mission could determine the fate of the principality. But more than that, it would determine the fate of the men and women who served under him. Nash closed his eyes, taking a deep breath to steady himself. He couldn't afford to let doubt cloud his mind. The Buzzard was more than just a ship. It was a symbol of everything they were fighting for: loyalty, duty, and the future of the principality. As the final preparations were completed, Nash returned to the bridge, where Alaric and the command team were waiting. The tension in the air was almost palpable as they prepared to execute their plan. Everything's in place, Captain, one of the officers reported. We're ready to begin the operation. Nash nodded, his gaze fixed on the holographic display. Take us in. And remember, we only get one shot at this. The Buzzard moved silently through space, its advanced stealth systems keeping it hidden from Tarn's sensors. As they approached the designated coordinates, Nash felt the tension in the room rise. They were about to walk a tightrope, and one wrong move could spell disaster. As the Buzzard moved into position, Nash could see Tarn's fleet on the display, a massive array of ships bristling with weaponry. It was a formidable force, one that could easily overwhelm them in a direct confrontation. But that wasn't their plan. They were going to hit Tarn where he least expected it, and then disappear before he could retaliate. "Hold steady," Nash ordered, his voice calm but firm. "Wait for my signal." The Buzzard's crew moved with quiet efficiency, their eyes fixed on their displays as they prepared for the attack. Nash could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, but he knew that there was no turning back now. "Now!" he commanded. The Buzzard's weapons systems roared to life, unleashing a devastating volley of firepower on Tarn's fleet. The surprise attack caught them off guard, and several of Tarn's ships were destroyed in the initial barrage. But Tarn's forces were quick to react, their remaining ships turning to engage the Buzzard. Nash could see the flashes of weapons fire on the display, and he knew that they were in for a fight. "Evasive maneuvers," Nash ordered, his voice filled with urgency. The Buzzard's engines roared as it darted through the battlefield, dodging incoming fire and returning fire with precision. The ship's advanced systems allowed them to stay one step ahead of Tarn's forces, but Nash knew that they couldn't keep this up forever. As the battle raged on, Nash felt the tension in his chest grow. They had to disable Tarn's flagship if they were going to have any chance of winning this fight. "Target their flagship," Nash ordered, his voice filled with determination. "We take it out, and the rest of their fleet will fall apart." The Buzzard's targeting systems locked onto the flagship, its weapons primed for a final strike. Nash could feel his heart pounding in his chest as he watched the display, his finger hovering over the trigger. "Fire!" he commanded. The Buzzard's weapons unleashed a torrent of firepower, striking the flagship with pinpoint accuracy. The impact was devastating, the flagship's defenses crumbling under the onslaught. Nash could see the explosions rippling through the ship's hull, and he knew that they had dealt a crippling blow. But the battle was far from over. Tarn's remaining forces were still a threat, and Nash knew that they had to make their escape before they were overwhelmed. "Get us out of here," Nash ordered, his voice filled with urgency. The Buzzard's engines roared as the ship turned sharply, speeding away from the battlefield. Nash could see the flashes of weapons fire behind them, but they were already out of range. As they made their escape, Nash felt a sense of relief wash over him. They had done it. They had struck a blow against Tarn's forces and lived to tell the tale. But even as they made their way back to the fleet, Nash knew that the fight was far from over. There would be more battles to come, more challenges to face. But as long as they had the Buzzard, and as long as they had each other, Nash knew that they could face whatever came their way. Hours later, after the adrenaline had worn off and the crew had settled back into their routines, Nash found himself alone in his quarters once again. The events of the day replayed in his mind like a hollow reel, each moment etched into his memory. He thought of the prince, of the calm determination in his voice as he had given the orders. There was a strength there, a quiet resolve that Nash couldn't help but admire. The prince was young, but he was a leader in every sense of the word. But there was also a weight to his words, a sense of urgency that hinted at something more. Something deeper. Nash couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this conflict than met the eye. That there were forces at play that they didn't yet understand. But for now, all he could do was focus on the task at hand. The battle was far from over, and there would be more challenges to face in the days ahead. As he lay down on his bed, Nash felt the familiar pull of exhaustion tugging at his mind. But even as sleep claimed him, he couldn't help but wonder what the future held. What challenges awaited them? What sacrifices would they have to make? One thing was certain, the road ahead would be long and difficult. But as long as they had the Buzzard, and as long as they had each other, Nash knew that they could face whatever came their way. The lights in his quarters dimmed, and the soft hum of the Buzzard's systems lulled him into a deep, dreamless sleep. And as the ship continued its silent journey through the stars, Nash's last thoughts were of the prince and the words he had spoken. Loyalty and duty were the pillars of the principality. And Nash would do everything in his power to uphold those ideals, no matter the cost.
Thank you so much for joining us on this cosmic journey. If you enjoyed the ride, please hit that subscribe button and share the adventure with others. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring you even more incredible stories. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the stars.